Most people think being rich is expensive, but the truth is, being broke costs you far more. Not all at once, not in ways that are easy to see, but in small, repeated moments that slowly drain more money, time, and energy than you ever planned. You buy something cheap because that's what you can afford. It works, for now. Then it breaks, so you replace it, and then again. What looked like saving money turns into spending more over time. You miss a payment by a few days, and suddenly there's a late fee. Your balance drops too low, and you're hit with another charge. You need money quickly, so you take whatever option is available, even if it costs you more later. And then there are the opportunities you never even get to touch, the investment you couldn't afford, the skill you didn't have time to learn, the risk you couldn't take. The wealthy pay once, the broke pay forever. And the hardest part is, most people don't even realize it's happening. There are hidden costs of being broke, and they quietly keep you stuck. In this video, I'll show you the 7 hidden costs that silently drain your life and how to break out of that cycle. Being broke isn't just about having less money. It's about the kind of decisions you're forced to make because of it. When money is tight, your options shrink. And when your options shrink, your decisions change. You're no longer choosing what's best. You're choosing what gets you through the moment. And over time, those kinds of decisions don't just cost you once. They cost you again and again. This is the part most people don't realize. Poverty charges interest. Not the kind you see on a bank statement, but the kind you feel in everyday life. You buy cheap shoes because they're affordable today, but they wear out faster, so you replace them sooner. You buy small amounts of food daily because that's what you can manage, even though buying in bulk would cost less in the long run. You fix problems temporarily instead of solving them completely, because that's all you can afford right now. And every time that happens, the total cost increases. Limited choices lead to short-term decisions. Short-term decisions lead to higher long-term costs. And that cycle repeats itself quietly, over and over again. That's why it's not just about income, it's about position. Because when you don't have money, you don't get to choose what's smart. You choose what's possible. And that difference is what keeps so many people stuck. Let's break down the 7 hidden costs that are silently draining millions of people every single day. First cost, paying more for less. The first hidden cost is something most people experience, but rarely question. Paying more for less. When money is tight, you don't always have the luxury of thinking long-term. You focus on what you can afford right now. So you go for the cheaper option. It solves the problem today. But over time, it quietly becomes more expensive. You buy a cheaper pair of shoes, and within months, they're worn out. So you replace them. Then again. If you add it up, you end up spending more than you would have on a single durable pair that lasts for years. The same thing happens with everyday essentials. Instead of buying in bulk at a lower cost per unit, you buy smaller quantities because that's what your budget allows. A little today, a little tomorrow. It feels manageable, but each purchase comes at a higher price. Even with electronics, the pattern repeats. Cheaper devices break faster, perform worse, and need constant replacement. What looks like saving money turns into a cycle of spending that never really ends. And none of this happens because of poor decisions. It happens because of limited options. When you're in survival mode, your focus shifts. You're not thinking about durability or long-term value. You're thinking about getting through the day, the week, the month. That's the psychology behind it. Short-term survival thinking forces long-term costs. And this is where the unfairness really shows. Because when you're broke, you're not actually buying cheap, you're paying repeatedly. And over time, that repetition quietly drains more money than you ever expected. Second cost, time becomes more expensive. The The second hidden cost is something you feel every day but rarely measure. Time becomes more expensive. When you don't have money, you don't just lose financial flexibility. You lose control over your time, and that loss quietly adds up in ways most people never stop to calculate. You take longer routes because they're cheaper, longer commutes, more waiting, more time spent getting from one place to another, just to save a small amount of money. But that time isn't free. It's taken from your day, your energy, your opportunities. You spend hours fixing things that shouldn't have broken in the first place. Cheap items fail, and instead of replacing them with something better, you repair, adjust, and manage them over and over again. What looks like saving money turns into spending time constantly dealing with problems. Even simple things take longer. You wait instead of paying for convenience. You delay instead of moving quickly. Every decision is stretched out because speed often comes at a cost. And when money is limited, speed becomes a luxury. And over time, this creates a pattern. Less money means more time spent maintaining, fixing, waiting, and adjusting. While others are using their time to grow, build, and move forward, you're using yours just to keep things together. That's the invisible trade-off. Wealth buys time. Poverty consumes it. And the less money you have, the more your time is taken from you, piece by piece, day by day, until you barely have enough left to move ahead. Third cost: fees, penalties, and interest. The third hidden cost is one that feels almost invisible at first, but over time, it becomes one of the most draining. Fees, penalties, and interest. These are the costs that don't come from what you buy, but from where you are financially. You miss a payment by a few days and there's a late fee. Your account drops below a certain amount and you're charged an overdraft fee. You need money urgently, so you take a loan, but the interest attached to it keeps growing long after the initial problem is solved. And the pattern repeats. It's not always about making bad decisions. Sometimes it's simply about timing. Not having money at the exact moment it's needed. And in those moments, the system doesn't pause. It adds a cost. That's the part most people don't talk about. Because when you're financially stable, these charges are easy to avoid. You have buffers, you have flexibility, you have room to move. But when you're living close to the edge, even a small delay can trigger a chain reaction of penalties. One fee leads to another. One delay creates another cost. And before you realize it, you're not just paying for what you owe. You're paying extra for being behind. This is how the system quietly works. It doesn't just reward those who are ahead. It penalizes those who are struggling to catch up. And over time, those penalties add up faster than most people expect. The system charges you for being behind. And the less margin you have, the more expensive every mistake, or even every delay, becomes. Fourth cost: mental bandwidth. The fourth hidden cost is one you can't see, but you feel it every single day. Mental bandwidth. When money is tight, it's not just your bank account that's under pressure, it's your mind. Every decision starts to carry weight. Every expense has to be calculated. Every choice feels like it matters more than it should. You're constantly thinking about what's due, what's left, what can wait, and what can't. Even when you're not actively doing anything, it's running in the background. Quiet, persistent, draining. And over time, that pressure builds. You begin to experience decision fatigue. Simple choices become exhausting. You overthink small purchases. You hesitate on things that should be easy. Not because you don't know what to do, but because every decision feels like it could set you back. That's where the real cost starts to show. Because when your mind is overwhelmed, your decisions change. You start choosing relief over strategy. You focus on solving immediate problems instead of building long-term solutions. Not because you want to, but because that's all your mind has the capacity for in that moment. And that shift affects everything. Your focus drops, your energy fades, your ability to plan ahead weakens. Even opportunities that require clear thinking and confidence begin to feel out of reach. This is the invisible weight of financial stress. When your mind is busy surviving, it can't focus on growing. And over time, that mental pressure doesn't just affect how you think, it shapes the kind of life you are able to build. Fifth cost: missed opportunities. The fifth hidden cost is the one that hurts the most because you don't always see it happening. Missed opportunities. Not because you weren't capable, not because you didn't want more, but because you simply couldn't afford to take the chance when it showed up. An investment opportunity comes, but your money is already tied up in immediate needs. A business idea crosses your mind, but there's no cushion to take the risk. A course, a skill, a chance to improve your position, but the timing doesn't align with your situation. So you wait, and while you're waiting, the opportunity moves. That's the reality most people don't talk about. Opportunities rarely pause. They don't slow down until you're comfortable. They don't adjust to your situation. They appear and they pass. And when you're financially limited, your ability to act is limited too. That's where the real gap begins to form. Because wealth doesn't just mean having money. It means having options, the ability to move quickly, the freedom to say yes when something valuable appears, the space to take calculated risks without risking everything. But when you're broke, that space disappears. Every decision feels heavier, every risk feels dangerous, and even when you see the right move clearly, you can't always make it. Over time, those missed chances begin to add up, not as obvious losses, but as paths you never got to take. Wealth creates options, poverty removes them, and opportunities don't wait for you to be ready. They move on. Sixth cost: expensive debt cycles. The sixth hidden cost is where many people get stuck without realizing it, because it doesn't feel like a choice. Expensive debt cycles. At first, it starts as a solution. You borrow to cover something urgent: rent, food, an unexpected expense. It feels temporary, just something to get you through the moment. But the cost doesn't end there. The interest kicks in. The repayment becomes heavier than expected. And before you've fully recovered, another expense shows up. So you borrow again, not because you want to, but because you have to. And slowly, a pattern begins to form. Debt leads to stress, leads to more debt. The stress of repayment affects your decisions. It limits your ability to save. It reduces your margin for error. And when something goes wrong, and something always does, you're pushed right back into borrowing again. That's how the cycle tightens. It's not reckless spending that traps most people. It's survival. Using debt to stay afloat, not to move forward. But the system isn't designed to make that easy. High interest rates make small loans expensive. Delays increase the cost. And over time, what started as a short-term fix becomes a long-term burden. You're no longer borrowing to solve a problem. You're borrowing to manage the last one. And that's when the shift happens. Debt stops being a tool and becomes a pattern, a constant presence, a background pressure that never fully disappears. Debt becomes a lifestyle, not a solution. And breaking out of that cycle takes more than effort. It takes awareness of how deeply it's holding you in place. Seventh cost: identity and belief system. The seventh hidden cost is the deepest one and the most dangerous. It's not about money anymore. It's about identity. After going through the same patterns again and again, struggling, adjusting, surviving, something starts to shift internally. Not in your bank account, but in how you see the world and how you see yourself. You begin to accept it. This is just how life is. Not out of laziness, not out of lack of ambition, but out of repetition. When something happens long enough, it starts to feel permanent, normal, expected. And that's where learned helplessness begins. You stop looking for better options, not because they don't exist, but because you don't believe they're available to you. You stop taking certain risks, not because they're impossible, but because they feel out of reach. Even when opportunities appear, there's hesitation, doubt, a quiet voice that says, "That's not for you." And this is where the real cost shows up. Because before anything changes externally, it has to change internally. But if your belief system is shaped by limitation, growth never even gets the chance to begin. You don't just struggle financially. You start thinking like someone who is meant to stay there. And once that identity takes hold, it reinforces everything else. The decisions, the risks you avoid, the chances you don't take. It becomes a cycle that feeds itself from the inside out. This is why it's the most expensive cost of all. Because it doesn't just affect your money, it affects your direction. The most expensive cost isn't money. It's what you start believing about yourself. What you should do instead. So what do you do with all of this? Because understanding the problem is powerful, but it only matters if it changes how you move. The first step is awareness. Start noticing the patterns, not judging them, just seeing them clearly. Where your money goes, what decisions feel forced, what costs keep repeating. Because you can't change what you don't recognize. Then focus on breaking small cycles first. Not everything at once, not a complete reset overnight, just one pattern, one leak, one habit that keeps costing you more than it should. Maybe it's replacing instead of repairing. Maybe it's avoiding a fee by planning a few days ahead. Small shifts, but they create space. And that space matters because the real goal is not just to save money, it's to change your position. That's why income growth becomes important. Not in a rushed or desperate way, but in a focused, intentional one. Building skills that increase your value. Learning things that give you better options over time. Because more income doesn't just give you more money, it gives you more choices. And choices change everything. At the same time, begin investing in yourself in ways that compound. Skills, knowledge, awareness. Things that don't break, don't expire, and don't need to be replaced. These are the assets that quietly shift your direction over time. And through all of this, there's a deeper shift happening. You move from reacting to choosing. From surviving each moment to thinking ahead. From doing what's possible to slowly doing what's smart. It doesn't happen instantly. You don't escape being broke overnight, but you break the pattern step by step. And that's where real change begins. Now you see what most people don't. That being broke was never just about not having enough money. It was about the position you were placed in, the pressure you were under, and the kind of decisions the position forced you to make. For a long time, it may have felt like you were falling behind because you weren't doing enough, not disciplined enough, not working hard enough. But the truth is, you were navigating a system that made everything more expensive, financially, mentally, and emotionally. And that changes how you see everything. Because now, you're no longer just reacting to life as it comes. You're starting to understand the patterns behind it, the hidden costs, the quiet cycles, the reasons things felt harder than they should have. That's the shift. You move from being a victim of circumstances to someone who sees the structure clearly, from reacting to every situation to slowly taking control of your decisions. Not perfectly, not all at once, but intentionally. And that awareness is powerful, because once you understand the game, you stop blaming yourself for every setback, and you start making moves that actually change your direction. It was never just about money. It was about the system you were trapped in. And now that you see it, you can choose differently. If this changed how you see money, subscribe. Because here, we don't chase shortcuts. We understand the game. We break down the patterns, the systems, and the mindset shifts that actually move you forward, step by step. And if you're ready to go deeper, watch the next video. That's where you'll learn how to start building real wealth from where you are right now Not someday, not when everything is perfect, but starting with what you have.